we face today and into the future. This committee will continue to push defense reform related to organization.
Americans should not take the current international order for granted. It did not will itself into existence. We created it. Likewise, it is not naturally self-sustaining. We have sustained it. If we stop doing so, it will fray and eventually collapse. This is precisely what some of our adversaries seek to encourage. President Putin, for example, understands that while conventional aggression may occasionally enable Russia to grab a bit of land on its periphery, the real center of gravity is the political will of the major democratic powers to defend Euro-Atlantic institutions like NATO and the EU.
I think the Russians have made a friend for life in Bashar Assad and basically saving his bacon. And that this is the Russian viewpoint, that Putin...
If you look at the first period of Putin's rule, from roughly 1999 through roughly 2008 or so, he was lucky in that time because oil prices were real high. And the Russian economy is fundamentally based on exporting natural resources. Oil prices have been diving. He's been under sanctions. And he's now shifted his emphasis to maintain the support of the Russian people to external adventures, which are quite popular in Russia.
Is basically starting, I don't know if you can call it a new Cold War, but it's based more on fascism than communism. But he is basically trying to undermine liberal democracies any place he can.
The question, I think, is how does this evolve? And that is where we have considerable influence. How do we have a relationship with China that is based on mutual respect and so forth, the foundation of which ultimately is the U.S. economy and then our military, diplomatic, and other instruments of power. And how do we accommodate, how do we work with China to accommodate its understandable desires so that we can help shape this world together?
And at the same time, prop up authoritarian dictatorships. And a bunch of reasons for it. I think, one, he honestly believes that's the best way to run it.
The question is the sustainability of this. Again, it's the battle after the battle. What happens after Mosul is cleared, the rest of Nineveh province is cleared? Can there be inclusive governance that guarantees minority rights as well as majority rule? If that's the case, you won't see fertile fields for the planting of the seeds of extremism and ISIS 3.0. If not, then I fear that we may see this movie again.
Is basically starting, I don't know if you can call it a new Cold War, but it's based more on fascism than communism. But he is basically trying to undermine liberal democracies any place he can.